The nation's biggest mall operator, Simon Property Group, is now suing the Gap for more than $65 million in skipped rent payments. Landry's chairman and CEO Tillman Fertitta told Power Lunch last week that a crisis is brewing for commercial real estate.
Get people back to work, and at the same time, the operators. If you don't do something, we are going to cause a commercial real estate bust at some time, because we can't pay rent if we're not doing business.
And joining me now is Heather Long, the economics correspondent at The Washington Post. She has a new story out today describing the extent of this problem, that nearly half of commercial retail rents were not paid in April and May. Heather, welcome. So I guess the best hope is that you wait a few months and things normalize, and maybe that's it. But this move by Simon against the Gap today suggests that it's not going to be that easy.
Yeah, exactly. I think you're right. And what we're seeing is landlords a lot of times are trying to wait this out. And what I've heard as I've called around is basically about half of retail tenants have asked for some sort of forbearance from their landlord. Of course, landlords do not want to give half of their tenants a break. That would be financially ruinous for them. So what they're trying to do right now is suss out who really needs the help and who's likely to survive this pandemic and be a good paying tenant later on. They might be willing to give them a break. But we're in this like black box phase where nobody wants to cave right now. Nobody wants to give the Gap that break, or give Starbucks, which has asked for some sort of forbearance for the next year, a break, because once they do that, every other tenant is going to come back and say, where's my break?
Absolutely. And we've seen a lot of this turmoil play out in the market near the lows, when a lot of the mortgage, real estate investment trusts, some of the commercial property names were really hard hit. Do you think investors will end up saying, look, we'd rather this investment work in the long run, and you guys, if you have to give them, forbearance or break, work that out for now, that's fine? Or do you think they're going to really hold the line here and say, no, we're worried that if you let one slide, you're going to let all of them slide?
Well, from an economic standpoint, and certainly I am very worried about lots of small businesses going belly up because of this standoff between landlords and tenants. But what I'm seeing so far and hearing so far is very much landlords are holding the line. They are more concerned about giving too much forbearance, giving up too much this early. And in particular, what you've seen in a lot of major cities like Washington, D.C. and New York City, there is currently a moratorium on commercial evictions. So even if you wanted to get rid of some problematic tenants, you can't do it right now. But towards the end of the summer, those moratoriums begin to go away, and that starts to give more leverage back to the landlord to say, come on, you got to pay your rent now.
Well, I'm surprised even now that, as you describe it, the landlords are holding the line, and they seem to believe they do have a lot of leverage over the tenants. But I mean, if the tenants leave, is someone else really going to, if the Gap leaves right now, who's going to jump up into that space?
I agree with you. And that's the best comment I heard about as I called around was, this is going to be a bonanza for lawyers. Basically, all of this is already ending up in court, whether it's large companies like the Gap, or in my story, I profile U Street Music Hall, a pretty iconic music venue in Washington, D.C. They're currently in court with their small landlord over whether or not they should get a payment plan. And this U Street Music Hall hasn't paid their rent for April, May, or June either. So very similar to the Gap. So you're just seeing this across the board. The other thing that doesn't come into play enough that people aren't thinking through, that I'm even more worried about than maybe turmoil among investors, I think there's going to be very few property rents paid by these commercial landlords, particularly in the retail space.